What up, man? Listen, home, by popular demand, Pinoy's now selling merch. Man, look here, all right? We got 3 designs. We got the Pinoy Gorilla regular avatar. We have the Red Dead Redemption. And on top of that, man, listen, we got motherfucking Angry Gorilla, all right? We got t-shirts. We have onesies for your baby. Take your baby and turn it into a baby gorilla. On top of that, we got pillows. Come cuddle up with the gorilla. And on top of that, we got cell phones and mugs. Cop you some merch right now.
Oh my god, I just fucking ear raped everybody. Wait, anyway, Tom P, we are live.
What up, and welcome to motherfucking Pinoy Live. Man, listen. We got a great show lined up tonight. Legit, I found some stuff that I wanted to react to, and I ain't put out a video in a few days because I've been busier than a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. I've been working, spending time with the family, spending time with the kids, doing what it is that I found something.
New.
What up? What?
Oh, you cut out completely.
I cut out. How did I cut out completely?
You said doing what it is that I need. Mecha Godzilla.
Man, listen. All right, I get rid of fucking Twitter and shit. So you know, I mean, you can fucking actually hear exactly what's going on and shit. But look, I wanted to stand here and put some content out on the channel, and I figured this here is probably the best way to do it, and everybody can sit here and listen to what's going on. Hey, Resolving Paradox, welcome, man. Here, have a wrench. You know what I'm saying? Nice to see you out here. But I'm here as always with my bottom bitch, my partner, my user, the only YouTuber with bedazzled knee pads. Accelerate, my nigga. What the fuck's going on tonight, man?
Nigga, I'm fucked.
I've
been drinking with my homies from high school since like 7 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, evening, whatever you want to call that. I don't know the difference anymore. But I'm here. I'm here. We're live, and I'm clicking into the buttons right. So,
hey, you're getting it done. You know what I'm saying? I'm not knocking you at all. You're handling your business. You're doing what you're supposed to do and shit. But man, look, I found this video of this dude Peter Zehan. It's on the Pompliano podcast, and it says Peter Zehan explains the geopolitical landscape. And I listened to this shit like 3 fucking times. And every time I hear it, I get more out of it. And I really like what this dude has to say. I think he is spot on in his breakdowns, and I think he says it better than either one of us could say it. But I wanted to show Excel and ask Excel what he thinks of it. And, I wanted to get a couple of y'all's opinions on things. And I think it's going to be like a great experience for all of us. So I figured we could stand here and break this down tonight. What do you think, man?
Yeah, you're going to get the fucking best answers from me. The absolute best ever. We're going to have, it's going to be like part of the Excel Gold album tonight. Let's go.
I got you. But hold on. Let me say what up to the chat real quick before we fucking get started. Fat Andy, CG Grizzly, Silver Eagle, what up? How the fuck you doing? Neffel, my brother. It's nice to see you. Gaming, we were just on his stream a little bit ago. It was nice motherfucker to see you out here and shit. And anybody else who's watching, anybody else who's gonna watch, it's appreciated you coming out and listening to the podcast. You know the deal. We like doing this out here. We do. You know what I mean? And I wanted to have some content to put out. So we're gonna like immediately get into this video because it's kind of fucking long, and you know how the hell we do. You know what I mean?
Yep. We're gonna get about 20 minutes in and totally derail the entire conversation to something else. So let's do it.
Right, let's get it done.
In order to keep their system more or less in place. So we've thrown a bottomless supply of money at this, $3 trillion in just the last 6 weeks. That's twice as much as the rest of the world combined. They don't have the kind of capacity that we have, which means that price is no object for the Americans suddenly making this transition in a matter of a few months.
Wait, hold up. I paused it because I think we might be out of sync.
Why? Where you at?
He started out talking immediately about, well, and we don't have the capacity of the rest of the world. right? No precursor.
I mean, all right. How about we'll start at the fucking beginning because I wanted to start at like 9 minutes, but we can start at the goddamn beginning of this shit. You know what I mean? We can make that
Oh
happen.
no, if you wanted to start there, that's fine. I just thought maybe that was my circle
Yeah.
being a fucking asshole because how my circle
Yeah,
goes.
I was gonna start around 9 minutes, but fuck it. Like, yo, we can break down the beginning of this shit too, so we can understand like where he's coming from. Because like this dude throws a lot of information in like fucking 45 minutes at you. A lot of information. So all right, here we'll start at the beginning. Let's.
Guys, bang bang. I've got Peter here with me. I'm super excited to do this. You are probably one of the most educated and thoughtful people when it comes to the geopolitical world, and obviously this is like your Super Bowl, so thanks for doing this.
Anytime.
For those that don't know who you are, maybe let's just start with your background and kind of the work that you've done up until maybe 6 months ago.
Sure. So I'm the technical term is geopolitical strategist. I help people figure out what the world is bringing their way and how they might be able to deal with it a little bit more constructively, or at least allow them to make some informed decisions. My background, I worked for think tanks. I did a quick stint with the U.S. State Department, worked for a company called Stratfor for a decade. But for the last 9 years, I've been specifically helping clients, whether associations or branches of the military or specific companies, wrestle with the changes the world is going.
All right, so he's a real asshole. I'm down with that.
And so maybe.
Wait, what? He's a what?
He's a real asshole.
What do you mean?
Oh, just like all the things he described himself as, like, right? Like, those people are all assholes.
What define assholes?
Geopolitical strategist. I mean, it's just kind of an asshole way of saying, like, yeah, I mean, I know, like, people might not like this policy, but let's just be real honest. People are fucking stupid.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. But it's there's a lot of, how do I put this? Everything breaks down to economics. You know what I mean? That's kind of like the theme of our channel.
Look,
right?
I wasn't preemptively trying to say he was wrong. I'm just saying he described his credentials, and I'm like, all right, so the guy's an asshole. All right, let's go on.
Yeah, basically.
Maybe talk us through just like the body of work you do, right? So like, where are you consuming information? How do you kind of work through that information to make some of the analysis and like the actual process of your work? And then we can get into kind of what's happening now, but just so people have that context.
Sure. So for process, to be perfectly blunt, I cheat. Let me kind of tell a tech story. So back in the 1980s, we figured out this little thing called fax machines, which meant that instead of every newspaper of size in the United States needing to have multiple overseas bureaus, what they really only needed is 2 or 3 people to send the information back and forth. Then we got email, which meant that you really only needed one person. In fact, your editing staff didn't have to be abroad at all. Then we got file attachments, and all of a sudden you could have roving reporters that you could dispatch to areas where there were stories, and everyone else you could just kind of close down. Well, now we've got algorithms that are actually writing stories. So we've seen this narrowing of capacity in the press, not just in the United States, but around the world, to the point that unless you're a national government putting out propaganda, you don't perceive a need for having an international news presence. And as this was going on back when I was at Stratfor in the 2000s, we had to develop our own. And so we started working with local reporters and local sources all over the world. And I still deal with, whoops, just about knocked over my computer. And we still deal with a lot of those sources. And the cheat is that we built this model of how the world works with economics and finance and demographics and energy and structures and military and geography and all of it. And we spend most of our time now looking for things that prove us wrong. It's not nearly as healthy for the ego, but wow, it's a big time saver. In fact, I've got a staffer whose primary job every day is to prove me wrong, and wow, she really loves her job.
All right, I'll give him some credit for that.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, like most of what we see in the political discourse is people that aren't trying to be proved wrong, but rather they have a starting narrative and they're just working backwards towards that narrative.
Yeah, like what I kind of do the same thing. Like there's a lot of times, like as I said, like I start off with a story, and then what I mean, like I have my mentality about it from what we've learned throughout, our history as just studying and learning and whatever the case.
But you're not sitting there fucking testing theory, like hypotheses for academic papers to see if it's an accurate descriptor of reality and that other people could test it, right? You're not doing that. That's not what you do. You just look at reality as you're being told and you give your commentary on it. Like these people at these think tanks that are like supposed to be super smart, what they should be doing, like that should be the default. The default should be they should be doing everything they can to prove themselves wrong before they even say a fucking word. They're like, we tried really, really fucking hard. We hired people that hate us, and they repeated the experiment, and they could not prove us wrong. This is not the world we live in right now.
I agree with you. Like, I agree with you completely. Like, completely and utterly, I agree with what you're saying. But like, again, like I stand here and like when I go through and I check a story, that I really don't understand, to be able to, see if I can find the reason why this happened, because I think that's as important as reporting a story sometimes, is reporting like how this got to this point. You know what I mean? Because we don't have any context for a story unless you understand like what's going on. Like if I told you, hey man, these people all got burned up in the city, and I'm like, well, how the fuck did that happen? Then, you get into the whys and hows and the history of the situation. Like, well, apparently somebody firebombed that bitch. You know what I mean? Like, why did they firebomb that bitch? Like, apparently they're upset over, this law that just got passed or whatever the case might be, or maybe it's Muslims and Hindus fighting in India. And it's important that we have the context of what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, or maybe there was like a random forest fire and like the embers just happened to hit the wrong building. And it was a complete freak accident, which puts a totally different context to the story. No, I get it.
Yeah, like, but like sometimes I come up with my own mentalities because I can't figure it out. You know what I mean? Like there's no like newscast that does what I do, right? So then I stand here and I get into it and I put my theories to the test by studying and reading and trying to figure out and testing, the waters as far as shit's concerned. And then you get into it and it turns out that I was wrong. So I have to break my way.
Oh my God. I just got it. Here's your next series, right? Go back to other videos you did. Right. Find the ones that like you might have commented on and you're looking back and you're like, I might have been wrong on. And just have a whole Pinoy new, like I guarantee you'd get like your maximum viewership if you said you titled everything Tom Pinoy was wrong. And you just go back to those videos. All right. Oh man, God, it's coming. All right, let's keep going now.
All right, let's keep going.
One of the big takeaways from your work, it coincides very well with the investing world. The best investors in the world say demographics lead a lot of trends, and the demographics can tell you a lot about kind of where the world is going. And you've given a number of presentations now and spent a lot of time analyzing that. So maybe just give us kind of the summary of how demographics around the world look differently, and kind of what that led you to believe was going to happen over some period of time before the virus really kicked in.
Sure. So let me do a little. Is it okay if I do a little screen share here?
Of course.
All right, let me pull this up.
You fucking boomer. Hurry up.
Right.
Okay. So this is what we would call a standard demographic profile. This is Mexico. Lots of children, fewer young adults, fewer mature adults, retirees at the top, and mortality builds it into a pyramid. And when you look at something like this, you're going to have a very different economic structure than what you might have for a country, say, let's pick out, Italy's a good one. Here's Germany. Are you seeing Germany there?
I can't see shit.
Or are you still in Italy?
Yeah, I can see Peter Zillion's face.
You're still in sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been a nuts sort of experience here for the last, month, as opposed to Germany. So here's Germany, very heavy in the middle age, moving towards retiree. And the difference between the two here is that in Mexico, you're gonna have a consumption-led system because young people do most of the spending. And in Germany, you're gonna have an investment-led system because when you're in your 40s and your 50s, you're saving for retirement. That simple dichotomy is kind of what drives most of what's going on in the global economy and has been driving the global economy for the last 30 years. What that means is we've been in this world where most of the developing world has been the consumption base. And most of the developed world has been the investment base. And that means the propensity for trade between the two is extreme, because the poorer countries need the cash, the more advanced countries need the consumption. And so you can have things going back and forth. The Germans are good at high-end stuff, the Mexicans tend to be good at low-end stuff, and some version of this is replicated around the world. So in an environment since the end of the Cold War, when you've got global security provided by the Americans, but no real global security challenges, everybody pours money into economic development. And so from 1990 until roughly 2017, we had the greatest economic boom in human history. And I dare say for most people in the investment world, this is the world that they think is normal. It's not normal. It's the most historically atypical period we have ever known as a species. And it was always going to end.
All right, I gotta pause there because I'm gonna give this guy a clap. I'm gonna give him a clap right there because he was definitely right on everything he said there. And the idea that that was normal was like, no, you just had a whole bunch of labor resources in third world countries that didn't know capitalism, and we went and outsourced everything to those countries, and they gave us what we wanted for very cheap prices, and then the investment world invested in those countries, saying, you're going to make shit for us and you're going to sell it for super cheap prices. I mean, that's what happened. I don't even think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's, like, in general, it's a good thing. It's just, it's not sustainable. It's because eventually these countries are going to catch up.
Yes. And that's what has happened over the past, like, 10 to 15 years is they have caught up.
So I'm going to guess that if we keep playing this video, this guy's going to say something very similar to that sort, if not exactly the same as what I just stated.
Remotely, because there's a lot more going on with this video, right? Because he goes through like region by region,
I'm sure,
and break down like there's.
I'm sure,
like this is amazing, and I told you, like, this is right up our alley as far as shit's concerned.
Well, and the whole idea that, like, you can outsource things to countries that are poorer, and then eventually it's going to catch up because those countries are going to become less poor. That's just kind of an economic truism.
Yeah,
it's just going to happen. So it's probably not super important to the conversation this guy's trying to have.
No, because like then you have to get into demographics. You know what I mean? Like the age of the population that's coming up in those fucking third world countries.
Yeah, there's a lot of extra things. But yeah. All right, let's go on.
All right, cool. Let's keep banging.
Because the developing world is aging rapidly, far more rapidly than the rich world ever did. And so they're becoming Germany, but without the infrastructure, without the institutions, without the respect for democracy, without the capital structure, without the industrial base. As well, the Germans and other countries like them were aging into mass retirement. So instead of a world where we've got propensity for growth and cooperation and trade, we're moving into a world where the rich world is all retired. They're neither producing nor consuming. And the developing world is becoming aged and losing that consumption edge, but without building the capacity to move up the value-added chain. You would call this an economic dislocation, which is a very nice way to say global collapse and depression.
This is what I kind of like wanted to, get to, like, so it's kind of on that level where, what happens when you no longer have any of the fucking structures in place.
Yeah, you're gonna have to keep going. Some of what he said just sounded like economic gobbledygook. Sounds good, but I don't understand where he came from. Like I think he like made a jump there that I don't necessarily agree with.
Where like you have like countries like Germany or Switzerland or fucking Italy or Greece or fucking Turkey, where you have an aged population that has a massive fucking social structure built into it, that they're just going to sit here and spend all their money on fucking retirement. And these retirees aren't going to buy anything because they're fucking broke and they're retired. Right? And you have the fucking third world. You're the third world moving into the same range.
Okay, yeah.
But without the social structures.
No, you got it. But you can also understand why I'm confused. And also, you can understand why it's so confusing. And I tried so hard to explain the business cycle to people on stream, but I'm looking at things from that attitude, and in which case what he said made no sense. But if you want to ignore that and be like a super Keynesian, then yeah, it makes sense in this context. I get it.
Well, the whole world's Keynesian. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
they all run off the central banks.
Like I get it, but that theory does not compute to what happens in reality. I'm pretty sure the Austrian business cycle explains everything that he just said, but let's keep going.
All right, we'll keep banging.
There are a few countries that stand out as exceptions to that. The United States is at the top of the list. We have the youngest demography in the rich world, and we already have a demography that is younger than China's and will be younger than Brazil's within 20 years. So the United States is slipping into kind of this pocket reality where it builds its own stuff, trades with itself, and maybe a select group of other countries. And say what you will about the Trump administration, and there are so many things that we can say about the Trump administration. One of the things they got
just like
right
you could say about any
is
administration,
picking out specific countries that they wanted to have relationships with after this transition. So we've had 4 big successes in trade negotiations: Japan, Korea, Mexico, Canada, and we're probably going to have a 5th one with the United Kingdom this year. That's the majority of the American trade relationship. So the United States, under normal circumstances, given 3, 4, 5 years, could have transitioned from where we are right now to that sort of friends and family trading plan without suffering a recession. What coronavirus has done is knock everything off the table and force the Americans to bring out kind of like fire hoses of stimulus and monetary push in order to keep their system more or less in place. So we've thrown a bottomless supply of money at this, $3 trillion in just the last 6 weeks. That's twice as much as the rest of the world combined. They don't have the kind of capacity that we have, which means that price is no object for the Americans.
Hold on, I gotta pause. When he said we don't have the capacity that they have, what he means is they don't have the petrodollar to back their bullshit up.
Yes.
Anyway,
they're not the world reserve currency.
Yeah,
kind of the thing. Like this is like whenever somebody starts talking about modern monetary theory, right? You need we need to immediately hit them in the mouth with it. This only works as long as we're the fucking world reserve currency.
Yep. That's why I had I heard what he just said there and I had to interject and it was like, no, it's not capacity. It has nothing to do with that. It's the petrodollar. Thanks. All right.
Suddenly making this transition in a matter of a few months instead of a few years. When we emerge on the other side of this, we're going to have American security, but not global security. An American trade network, but not a global trade network. American reindustrialization and global deindustrialization, and a demographic collapse in most of the world. It's going to be a completely new system. But historically speaking, it's a lot more normal than what we've been in for the last 30 years.
Yeah, one of the things that's really interesting, as I kind of.
All right, so this guy gets into both the economic side and the demographic side at the same time, and I like that we're going to both ends, because they're both really important when you have this conversation.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. And as I kind of hear you describe this is there's this weird world where when Trump took office, kind of this America first type mentality, I don't think that it had anything obviously to do with coronavirus or kind of anything that's transpired since he took office. But in some way, we're almost backing into that out of necessity. So you see things like, let's bring all of our supply chains back to the US. A lot of this trade talk, right, is the virus is almost forcing that narrative now, and it's becoming more accepted. It's seen less as kind of either racist or in some way discriminatory. But one of the things that you said in a recent presentation, I think it was at the Upfront Summit, is the Americans' strategic order that helped them win the Cold War. That's not the strategic order that they're going to need to be successful in the future, right? Like the important thing here is there is a necessity of change because the world is changing, and the countries that you described kind of recognize that. What happens to the countries that don't recognize this, right? Do they
Okay, so like this is something else that like I talk about on a regular basis, and I probably should mention the Cold War more than I do, but like because I want to go back to the beginning of the Cold War, and I don't really look at it like that because that Cold War doesn't register with my brain because it was over when I was a young kid. You know what I mean? Like I was what 8, 9 years old when the Cold War ended and Russia fell. So like it just doesn't crack inside of my head as far as that shit's concerned. But the reality is that we're still living in a Cold War mentality as far as our like geopolitical fucking like world, how we
Well, yeah,
stand
like
here
right
and
now
like do shit as a country.
The Cold War with Russia was restarted recently because of Trump getting elected, right?
No.
We kind of have a Cold War with China at the moment.
Well, the Cold War, like fucking, like it got restarted. I don't know if you remember this, but like when they fucking, when the Crimea thing happened back in like 2012, 2013, like it kind of ramped it back up a little bit.
Yeah, no, hold on. I'm not saying it's exactly the same. It's like back when Russia and the United States were trying to compete for being a global superpower. What I mean by like when I say Cold War, what I mean is we're not actually at war with each other, but we're adversarial, and we push policies to try to shove things in one direction against the will of the other country, and vice versa, right? So we're doing that with China still, and to some extent Russia. God, what these guys said that like I mean I don't think they understand the reverse of everything they were saying with globalization, which is it's actually that nationalism exists and it will rise in any country. And if you bank too much of your production capacity on another country that gets a nationalist streak, you're gonna be fucked. So you should probably have some production at home to make up for that.
Yeah, and like they're gonna get into this, and like here, real like in a second, they're gonna get into this, especially about India and shit. You know what I mean? But like what I'm saying is that like our geopolitical structure, as far as like our foreign our foreign policy in the United States is still based on a very Cold War mentality. And we've never really adjusted. Like we never really adjusted anything. Like we've kind of been on autopilot since like the 1950s and shit. And because everything just kind of worked in the way it did, and it's not working anymore. And everything has to be revamped. And that's kind of where I'm really getting into. And that's why I wanted to look at this the way I am, because it's a new world out here. And I think the Trump administration is on top of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
All right, so let's keep banging.
Right? Do they literally?
Yeah, some of them won't be countries much longer. Little backstory. So the core idea that drives a lot of what I do is why the United States did what it did during the 20th century. So we were pulling into Western Germany during World War II, and we're looking on the horizon. We see the Soviet war machine, and to be perfectly blunt, that's kind of scary as shit. So we were like, okay, this is in a different hemisphere from us. We cannot, with sea lift capacity, fight the Soviets in Europe. We will lose that fight. We need everyone in Europe to be on our side. So we basically bribed them. We rebuilt their countries. We provided them with security overwatch. We provided them with the nuclear umbrella. We opened our market so they could export their way back to being first world countries, if in exchange they allowed us to write their security policies. And that trade, that guns for butter trade, is what enabled the United States to ultimately prevail in the Cold War. The big problem, however, is when we got to 1990 and the Cold War was over, we voted out of office the president who was figuring out what was next, and then voted in 4 successive presidents who didn't care about foreign affairs much at all. And so we've just kind of been on drift now for 30 years. And by providing global security, but not asking for anything in return, Americans became steadily more disenchanted with the world we know. Trump is not simply the natural progression of that. He's just kind of the next step on the road. Whoever comes after Trump is likely to be less inclusive and less internationalist than he is, because the economic structure will demand that whoever is next go that direction. So if you look at, say, the Democratic primaries, when we had like 195,000 people trying to be president, all of them said that Trump was being too soft on China in the trade talks. Trump is not nationalist by American standards on trade. He's kind of middle in the road. And the next phase of this is going to be far more mercantile than anything that we've seen in the last 80 years.
Yeah. So speaking of China,
hold on, I gotta pause this because
go ahead. He's
saying something I said about Donald Trump for a long time. Like all the fucking like the far left people, like, do they even like take a look at what Trump has actually done? Like policy wise, let's get rid of his Twitter and like the random bullshit he said, whatever the fuck's going on with his press secretary. Like Donald Trump has actually governed like a moderate, as far as I know, like in anything I can go through American history. Maybe like a little bit more right wing or left wing, depending on who you talk to when it comes to foreign policy specifically. And this guy like just came out and said like Trump's actually kind of middle of the road on all this stuff. So I give him credit. He called the spade a spade, even though the media will tell you that Donald Trump is some evil warmonger.
Hey, somebody asked for the link. Somebody asked for the link to the original video. I put it in the chat. I'm gonna put it in the description after this. Like once all this is over, I'll fucking make the adjustments and stuff. You know what I mean? And I mean like break down. Like I'll put all the stuff in the description as far as links and you know what I mean, whatever the case might be. You know what I mean? And I'm also probably going to put this up on Anchor. I'm going to download the audio and put it up on Anchor probably tomorrow or whatever the case might be. So it's a podcast as well.
Yeah, look, but and also if you want more live streams from Tom Pinoid, you should go to www.streamlabs.com/Pinoid News. Donate a few bucks here and there because YouTube ain't got to pay us. And if I get my $20 to feed my alcohol addiction for the next month, then I'll do more.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like I got to pay Excel. You have to remember that. This is not free.
And meth, right? Like I got to do all of the above.
It's helpful. But yeah, like as far as like what my man said, you know, like oh yeah, fucking nationalism and shit. As far as what my man said, like yeah, like Donald Trump is not he is not outside of the realm of what presidents have been.
He's your stupid Democrat from 1990.
Yo, I'm gonna go with.
Are we wrong?
I'm gonna go with 1970s.
I don't know. They were extra racist back then. Donald Trump was actually the first openly pro-gay marriage president that we've ever had.
Yo, from the start.
That's actually a fact, and even like that left-wing dude I follow for the new discourses stuff that's trying to combat social justice ideology. Even he said, like, yo, look, like, I don't like Donald Trump. I mean, I'm a lefty, but on this one issue, like, there's no way you can sit here and try to tell me that fucking Donald Trump is anti-gay marriage when he was the first person that actually, like, during what was the Republican National Convention, held up a flag and been like, yeah, I'm fine with that. I don't give a shit.
He's like, whatever, I don't fucking care. Like, yeah, man, dude, look, he wants, like, y'all want lower taxes? Like, yo, come over here. Like, I don't care what you do with your bedroom. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah.
No shit, and that resonated with a lot of people.
He said maybe we should not like fucking kick people out of the party who have massive amounts of free cash to donate. How about that one there? You know what I'm saying? Let's keep going.
Pretty much said that they won't be a unified or industrial country in the next decade or so, which I think kind of shocks people. Like that's a big statement. Talk a little bit just about why you believe that, and then what does the world look like if you're right in that prediction?
Sure. So China is one of the fastest aging societies in the world. You hold a one-child policy for 35 years, you run out of 30-year-olds. I mean, that's how math works. The Chinese cannot interact economically with the rest of the world without a global security paradigm in place. They don't have a long-range navy. In fact, 90% of their firepower can't sail more than about 1,000 miles from the shore, so that doesn't get them to any major consumption clusters. They import pretty much all of the raw commodities that allow them to function. That's everything from corn on one side to oil on the other. So if they don't control the sea lanes, which they can't, they're completely dependent upon American security largesse just to exist. And if you look back at the long stretch of the history of the Han Chinese, 3,500 years, they've very, very rarely been unified. They're usually engaged in some sort of civil war or fighting off some sort of invasion. Neither of those goes well. In fact, their only period of peace and prosperity and unity in their entire history is under the American-led order since 1946, specifically since 1990. And if you look back to simply achieve political unity in the past, most of that period was under the Mongol occupation. This is not a place that holds together well. So they don't have the demography, they don't have the resources, they don't have the financial model, they don't have the physical access, they don't have the military capacity. This only works when someone from the outside forces everyone to be on the same side. That was the American-led global order, and that is now over. So the Chinese today, with this propaganda push on COVID, it's not to convince the world that the virus didn't come from China.
You wish what?
I wish the American global order was being destroyed, but it's not. It's still alive and well. So this guy can keep going and convince me, but initially, if you're going to say that, I'm going to say no.
All right. The problem is that we don't have the money to do it anymore.
Yeah, but we got the fucking guns, the tanks, and the petrodollar that we can print off of.
Okay. All right.
Until it ends. Like, don't get me wrong. There's an end in sight, but this guy's saying the end is nigh, and I'm just like, it's not today.
I think it is, and I'm gonna tell you why. So in the 1880s, warfare changed, right? Completely, like from like one side to the other. It completely switched on to what it is today. It went from like the Civil War was the last war that was fought where individuals lined up and shot in lines. You know what I'm saying? After that, it became as much of a technological race as it did warfare, right? And being able to continue to dump money into the tech sector to keep the top end shit that we have and keep being able to be the greatest fucking military power in the world is something we're not going to have the money to keep doing. Like flat out, we can't keep spending the amount of money on GDP.
Once again, what I said initially is, you're talking about like the end is now. No, the end is in the future. I agree with you, but it's not now. Like it's still going. Like it's. I mean, just look at what happened. He talked about how we could spend $3 trillion in printed money and not even hit a 10. It's not yet.
Well, no, I mean,
know
like,
it's going to happen. It's going to happen eventually, but it's not now.
Me and you have had this conversation before, right? About the different. There's two different ways. There's two different markets for like fucking money printing, right? There's one market which is the stock market and international markets, right? Where you can it's a empty hole you can just throw money into and it doesn't affect anything. Then there's a separate one, which is actual domestic spending.
Yep.
When you spend domestically, it drives up prices immediately.
Well, it's actual investment that deals with real world production, but that's
it's a dollar.
It's a hard topic for most people to digest. So
yeah, but I'm saying like me and you understand this, right? So, but we cannot. We cannot continue to print money the way we've been doing as far as military, Social Security, Medicare, right? Because it goes directly.
No. The argument I'm making, Tom, and you need to make very clear about this is we cannot in the long term. But in the short term, like we've been doing it for a long fucking time. So I'm not gonna call that date. This guy's saying it's now. And I disagree. I think that the petrodollar is long live the petrodollar. we'll be all right until right before we need to collect Social Security for people of our generation, and then it'll be dried up.
Well, I think the petrodollar's about dead. Like, I think it's over with. I think that's a dead currency at this point. Right. Just with oil going down to a negative point. Like,
the reality is the sooner the better, but that's the problem is I believe the sooner the better. I just like that we find a way to kick it down, like kick the can down the road.
Well, here's the thing,
been really good about that.
Well, the Europeans aren't going to be able to stand here and like devalue their currency if it's tied to the American dollar and oil goes negative.
Oh no, fuck. I disagree, man. They're just gonna throw euros out like fucking candy, like they did for Greece. Greece is still broke.
Well, no. I'm saying if your currency is tied to the U.S. currency. And like basically, our currency is tied to the fucking price of oil, and the price of oil goes down to $5 a fucking barrel. You can't devalue your currency to be able to pay back debts cheaply or purchase goods or do any of this if you're tied to the U.S. dollar.
All right, fair enough. Let's not keep playing. We've only gotten through like 10 minutes of this video.
15 minutes. We're getting there. We're getting there.
We're going to have to do, by the way, we're going to have to do a part 1 and 2 of this.
It's to force a nationalist uprising in China itself so that people are willing to side with the Chinese Communist Party in a period of extreme political and economic stress, because that's what's coming for them. And if that doesn't work, China simply implodes.
So that's what that Reportify fuck
I read
is doing.
The book, I think it was Paulson wrote back in like...
What do you mean?
Oh, Reportified Media, that fucker. That's like, he literally made a video like a week ago saying China, the land of the free. And I was like, oh, that's what's happening.
Yeah. Hang on, fucking checking the chat room real quick. All right. Yeah. It's, everything's different than what we think it is. Like, because like so much of what we get is fucking propaganda from the fucking CIA and shit. And it's, just the whole thing's fucked. Like,
yeah, well,
it really is.
Fucking Reportify, like I was watching, and it makes you want to vomit. Aircraft Sparky was right. He was just like, I don't need to do a bunch of research to be like China is asshole. Like, I hate my government too. Fuck America. Like we're screwed, but China is asshole. And Reportified Media is sitting there like putting up videos after this COVID shit's going down, and after all sorts of news stories broke and Twitter things broke about how they're like literally like welding people into their houses and shit like that. And he's like, I'm gonna make a new video called China, the land of the free. And I'm like, you fucking dipshit. You like I can't even take you. I'm done. Like for a little bit we were talking to the guy, but fuck him. Like he's just. How wrong can you be?
I don't know. Like,
you can be more wrong than that.
I'm super disconnected from fucking China. Like, to the point where, like, I feel like an anthropologist studying, like, some weird tribe in the fucking Amazon or some shit. And they're, they're over here, like, fucking beating each other with sticks. And I'm just standing here, like, documenting it. You know what I mean? Got nothing to do with me. You know what I mean? Just don't got nothing to do with me.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get that. But, like, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, like, I think America is asshole. I don't want America. I just don't like what our government does. And this guy's over here saying, like, China's doing it better. It's like, you fucking dipshit. There's no way.
I mean, like, okay. If you want to talk about results, like, as far as, like, being able to stop the spread of a disease, yeah, China's probably better at it. Why? Because they're willing to weld people inside their fucking houses.
Well, yeah, they'll also just, like, they'll just put a bunch of people in, like, a highly populated area into fucking gas ovens and say, yep. No, they died of natural causes.
And like, fuck it. You know, I mean, they'll set their house on fire and go, God damn, man, fucking like, yo, they didn't die of COVID, you know, like, yeah, I mean, that's one way to do it.
Meanwhile, over here in America, you have people that are going to the hospital because they have fucking, like, some sort of, like, crazy, like, heart failure disease. And they're just like, oh, well, you tested positive for COVID, so that's what killed you.
Yeah. You know, you got shot Oh, by the way, you died of COVID.
Exactly.
Nigga died with 32 gunshots in him and COVID related death.
What was happening? You were out jogging, COVID-19 death.
Like you got hit by a bus, COVID-19. like, yeah, fucking dumb. Let's keep going. Fucking
like 2015, 2016, and he was talking all about China and kind of his experience there. But one of the things that really stuck out to me was the whole idea, like that entire political system and social structure is built on there being a lack of social unrest, right? The second that people see unrest, like this thing could flip very quickly. And so a lot of what they do is, quote unquote, taking care of the people. I guess how much of the narrative around they're driving manufacturing, they're driving, technological advancement, artificial intelligence, kind of leaps and stuff coming out of China. How much of that can save them or maybe prolong what you're talking about versus like the trends are just too powerful and it won't really actually matter?
The trend that matters is their social control program. They've basically blocked off the Chinese internet from the rest of the world, and they're using it in other data management tools, some proto-AI stuff, in order to manage their population, so that whenever you do have, to be perfectly blunt, 3 people getting together in the same room to talk about the government knows and can use its army of censors and thugs to basically break it up. It's never been tried before. It's very Orwellian. We're now actually having a situation where the Chinese government is installing monitors in people's apartments if they're suspected of maybe having COVID in order to enforce quarantine. So, things that in this country are in the realm of fiction are now being implemented on a regular basis. Ethnic cleansing is being done this way, forced sterilizations, what they're doing with the Uyghurs out in Xinjiang, a million people in concentration camps. They're trying to take the best data management tools available and use it to force the unity of the Han identity as defined by the CCP. Can you imagine what Milosevic would have done with these technologies? And now we're seeing it done on a scale that's like, 2 orders of magnitude larger. That's the only way that this works. And even for that to work, the United States still has to keep providing global security and asking for nothing in return, because the only way they can keep that going is if they can continue to access resources and export markets. So the most likely future here where China holds is the US stops doing what it's doing. The lights go out in China because the power goes out because they can't import their materials anymore. The export markets disappear. And we drop into kind of a neo-Maoist tyranny where the standard of living in China just absolutely plummets and they just kind of become completely inward focused. In the few chapters of Chinese history where the center has held, it's kind of looked like that. They'll just be doing it with, webcams as opposed to monitors on every corner. It's not a pretty picture. And almost all the other scenarios are worse. So I totally understand why they're willing to denigrate their own population to that degree to remain in control, because the alternative is implosion and chaos. And, that's not hardly a friendly version at all. The Chinese are fairly astute students of their own history. They understand what's at stake here.
Yeah, like this is kind of where I get down to with the fucking Chinese bullshit, right? I understand if they want to remain in power, this is what they have to do. Like, I get it. You know what I mean? Yo,
well, that's what they're doing, though. I mean, that's all of what China has been doing. It's making the people just well off enough to keep them complicit. That's why they've adopted this bullshit, pseudo-capitalist mentality. I mean, we call them they're not. Right, I'm not gonna really if you look at what they actually do, they're not communist. They've adopted this pseudo-capitalist thing that's bringing up the well-being, and then they tell their populace, "Look at the great things the government has done for you." Right, now you eat off of two corn bowls a day instead of just one.
Well, it's not just that, you know what I mean? It's, you know, like every time they do have a capitalist fucking structure grown, it's grown with, you know what I mean, the government intertwined with it. Right? Like all of those, like for instance, the what the hell's that fucking the fucking big tech firm over there that we're all fucking worried about and shit. You know what I'm talking about? The one like fucking they were worried about the cell phones and shit and all that nonsense.
No, it's one of the fucking chip makers, but it doesn't really matter. Like at the end of the day, like the Chinese government, they allow people just enough freedom and just enough capitalism to let certain people get ahead so that they can make money and stay in power, and that's it. Like they do not want to give up power. It would take very, very little actually in China. Like if China had to go through a real economic collapse, you would just see riots, and they would move towards some sort of liberal democracy. And I say liberal democracy in the classical sense, not liberal in the way
no. Like Asians are socialist by nature.
You don't think they would do it? Because I'm saying like Japan. No, I don't. Japan went that route. South Korea went that route.
No, it didn't.
It's okay. Look, it's not a constitutional. It's a lot fucking closer. Actually, you know what? Japan's better than Germany.
For what?
Yeah, what they like on the basis of like what they have for like social freedoms and getting of capitalism. Like Germany's way worse.
Japan, how do I put this? Japan is still a very custom structured fucking nation, though.
Well, yeah, but it's not that it's being forced upon them, though. That's what I'm getting at. Like, as far as laws go, like Germany is way more restrictive.
Well, like but I'm saying like Japan is like by nature, Japan just has this natural fucking mentality to be nationalist and ethnic about the Japanese people.
Well, yeah, no, that's a different story between like how they actually govern within themselves, right? This whole that's another conversation, Tom. That's a conversation that's gonna get us in trouble when we start talking about like, hey, why should we take in immigrants from countries that are different cultures than our own?
Well, yeah, like, I mean, but like, yeah, like
that's how we
what I'm.
That's why
they do everything for the state, though, right? But they do everything for the state in Japan.
No, I mean your individual citizen doesn't. Is what I'm getting at. It's very similar to America, where if someone was like on the outside looking in, they would say, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're supporting the state is bullshit that's bombing countries over in the Middle East." But all we're thinking about is like, yeah, taxes are low enough. My bills are. I can still afford my cell phone. I don't really give a shit what's going on anywhere else.
Yeah, but I'm saying like all Japanese culture in general states that like everything is done for the fucking like the good of the state. You know what I mean? Like, you know, they're very, very statist over there. So is South Korea. It's the same way over there, and they're both extremely socialist when it comes down to shit. Extremely fucking socialist.
Yeah. No. Yes and no. I get what you're saying about how there might be like this mentality amongst the people to be more cooperative, but as far as the governmental structures go, like especially in South Korea, they've embraced capitalism like a motherfucker, which is why if you're not going to get that shit made in China, South Korea is making all sorts of electronics.
Well, South Korea exports their shit to Malaysia to be fucking made in China as well.
They learn from us. They're like, hey, we're not the poor ones anymore. Let's go to Malaysia.
Well, the thing is like they can't afford, you know what I mean, to pay the fucking workers what they're worth. And that's mostly due to the fact, again, they have a very socialist fucking government structure. They pay a fuck ton in taxes.
Look, I'm just saying, like, even in America where we're supposed to be free, we can't, if you took away our cell phones, there's going to be riots everywhere.
Well, yeah, like I heard somebody recently say, they said fucking they were in fucking Cambodia where like it was all just like wooden huts and fucking mud and shit, right? But like everybody had a cell phone. Like, yeah, cell phones have legitimately fucking been a technology that they could democratize very easily and give to everybody, but it hasn't really changed the way of life for most individuals, other than the fact of like what you do with your free time. It's all right. Well, let's keep banging.
Yeah. Before we move on to another part of the world, what would have to change, or what data would you have to see to kind of change your mind as to like, this is where we're headed? If I saw X, my mind would actually
Sure.
think it's going to happen.
We would have to have a significant change in technology that allows people over age 65 to continue to work and pay taxes, coupled with a social change that forces them to continue to work and pay taxes. Most of our medical breakthroughs when it comes to people age 55 and over is about extending life, not extending working life. And that mindset has to change radically for us to go in a different direction here.
And I guess part of that is technological change is the type of work could also change, right? So just because you're getting older, you may not be able to go into the field or go into the factory and kind of do more of the manual labor. But if there was even something that could change the way that people work itself, that also is part of that.
That would be one way, but I think we all know that convincing our parents to use Skype has been a bit of a challenge these last couple of weeks, and trying to train.
Oh, way to go! Way to go! Good joke, man. Love it. Fucking love it. Yeah.
Well, I'm saying though, like, legit, like, you can't have a 65-year-old person like still in the goddamn workforce while they're going through Alzheimer's.
Yeah, I mean, I get what this guy's trying to say. It's like, we're extending life and we're actually making people healthier. But for God fucking sake, if you want proof that this guy is actually making a point, look who the Democratic nominee for president is.
Yeah, like, like
highest office in the land, and like that guy can, like, we're trying to convince ourselves he can still do it.
Yeah, and like, here's the bitch. It's like, it's not just at 65. It's like 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, right? Like, 5 years after 65 is 70. There's Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
It turns out the reality is that in this modern age where we can keep people alive a lot longer than we used to, people's cognitive abilities, physical abilities, it varies dramatically based on the individual. So some blanket plan by the government is probably not going to solve the issue. But
the government can't solve this problem for us.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. The government legit cannot solve this fucking problem for us. All right, let's keep going.
Entirely new industry. That's a reach.
Yeah, for sure. Let's switch gears and go to the Middle East. Obviously,
there's a cheery topic.
Yeah, there's complete chaos right now. Everything from oil to a lot of kind of the geopolitical relations there. Just what's kind of your general view of that region itself, and kind of how you look at the demographics and what you expect to happen there?
Well, you're going to have to break it up. It's, there's a lot of different subregions. So let's just kind of go through them. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, UAE, those countries, the very rich countries of the Arab side of the Persian Gulf, they're involved in a global price war, primarily with the Russians, but not exclusively anymore. They are deliberately trying to drive oil prices as low as possible, negative if they can, and I think they can. And if they pull this off, I'd say even odds at present, it's going to take about 20 million barrels of crude production globally offline for years. And they will finally have a crude market where they can set the price and set the volume over the midterm. Looks.
What you laughing about?
Hold up. Real life example of the actual power they had, right? So when COVID happened, gas went down to it was like $1.29 a gallon where I lived. Guess where it's at now? $1.79 a gallon. It just keeps going up every day because we reopened. The pressures that this guy's talking about, I'm just sorry. Like I'm gonna make a gambit that it's not going to reflect the actual demand for consumption here later, because they're just gonna be selling it and the prices are gonna go up. But Let's keep going.
Okay, well, what he's like, yeah, he's gonna explain this, right? But what he's talking about is there's a lot of places where if the fucking Saudi Arabians force the price down to the point where these people are closing down because it doesn't make any sense to operate anymore, like Nigeria or fucking Venezuela, whatever the case might be, it would take them years to reopen the fucking well. Them in particular, not us, them, because like their technology is so far behind.
All right, I'll give credit to that to an extent, but it's one of those things where like you can say that now with impunity, but we have no idea what it's going to look like a year from now.
All right, let's keep going.
Looks broadly like they're going to be able to pull that off.
So explain this more, because I think one of the things that you had previously said was around these negative prices in oil, but what occurred was last week or 2 weeks ago when the May contracts, the physically settled futures contracts went negative. That's not what you're talking about, right?
No, the May contract was in the United States, one specific spot at Cushing ran out of future leased storage. The storage wasn't actually full yet. Well, 4 to 6 weeks from now, it really will be full. And it won't just be at Cushing. What the Saudis are doing is any place they see a competitor, first and foremost the Russians, where they've got a pipeline that empties out into a populated area or a pipeline that hits a port, they are sending super tankers of crude to super saturate demand in those locations, specifically going after things like Rotterdam or Suez or Korea that are popular transshipment points for Russian crude, making sure that the tanks are completely full so the Russian crude has nowhere to go. They're doing this to a slightly less intense degree wherever all their other competitors are. So, for example, slightly less intense. There's 50 million barrels of crude from Saudi Arabia coming to the American Gulf Coast to try to knock shale out. That's nothing compared to what they're doing to Europe and Asia. And the goal is just to fill up all the tanks so that the producers have nowhere to sell their crude whatsoever. So they have to shut down their pipelines and they have to shut down their wells. Now, in a place like the United States, if you do this and the wells get shut in, they can be turned back on later. And from the point that you start drilling a shale well to the day you get first crude is only about 6 weeks. So US shale is going to take a hell of a hit. There's probably about 1 million barrels per day of production already offline. Probably another 2 million are going to happen before the end of the year. That's probably going to be front loaded. That's a 25% reduction in shale output. That's a big deal, but it'll be back in a couple of years. But if you shut in wells in Nigeria and Siberia, they're gone. It's going to be years, if not a decade, before you see those producing again. So the Saudis are taking a long haul here, taking a big economic hit on the front side. They can afford it. Across the Gulf, Iran, say what you will about the Trump administration, he won. Iran is no longer a net oil exporter. They're going to actually be importing over the summer, which is something they have not had to do in over a century. I don't think that this is
the shit that I'm talking about with this dude that like legit. This is opinions that you don't often get.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this guy credit. He's definitely like an astute observer of what's happening. I don't agree. Maybe like I think his observations are like right on point, but multiple times already I've disagreed with what he thinks the source problem is. And that's fine. I love arguing on those grounds, right? Where we're observing the same thing, but we're disagreeing on what the problem might be. Like I'm sitting here talking about the petrodollar and other things that he's not really that into. That was just one example, right, of the source of the issue we don't agree on. But at least I could talk to this guy and be like, I agree with your observations. They're not wrong.
Well, we should see if we can get him to fuck on and have that conversation with him. You know what I mean?
We should. I want to get that James Lindsay dude on some.
Like legit, let's see if we can get this dude to fuck on. You know what I mean? I don't know if our shit's big enough to get him on, but maybe. You know what I mean? Like fucking we can get an actual couple of real guests on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what we got to do to get people like this on is be like, look, we're a small podcast. We like economics. We're a little bit trolly, but like we'll behave. I promise. You gotta like ask like legit questions. You can't just sit there and like get this person on and be like, repeal the fucking 19th, motherfucker. Like it's not. I'm just saying like that works with our crowd and it makes sense within the context of like what we talk about. That guy's not gonna understand. He's just gonna hear it and be like, no. All right, I'm done.
Yeah.
He would quit. But
yeah,
we probably could. We probably could get him on.
I hear you. Let's keep going. You know what I mean? Because like I legitimately agree with about 95% of what the dude says.
Yeah. Well, once again, I don't think he's observation.
You know what I mean? Like I don't disagree with him. I mean, I think some of his forecasts might be a little off. You know, I mean, just because.
Well, because that's off the observations, right? Like he's pointing out things that are happening that are real problems. And I agree with him when he does that. And the only times I've had any problem with him is when he said, well, what we really should be doing is this. And then that's where I break. But he hasn't really done that much.
I feel you. All right, let's keep going.
That this is going to cause regime change. Anytime you've got 100,000 people in your elite, it takes a really big stick to move that. But this is the end of Iran having cash, which means Iran in Lebanon and in Gaza and Iraq and Syria and all the other places that the Iranians have had their fingers, all of a sudden they don't have any money to back it up. They're massively overextended, which raises the opportunity for countries like Turkey or Saudi Arabia to turn the tide in their favor. So expect a lot more nutsoid violence in this region because the Iranians, everyone forgets, the Iranians are not the violent actors here. That's the Saudis. ISIS came from Saudi Arabia. Al-Qaeda came from Saudi Arabia. And we should expect to see a lot more groups like that boiling up throughout this entire region, just burning down everything that the Iranians think that they have achieved in the last 10 years. It's going to be wretchedly awful. What other countries are you concerned about?
Well, so let's go back to Saudi Arabia for a second.
Sure.
The oil playbook that they're playing out right now, where they're trying to literally saturate these areas, how much of that is opportunistic because it was presented by the virus driving down the consumption of oil versus this was like some playbook that they had ready and waiting and they were going to execute it with or without the virus occurring?
Good question,
the Saudis
sir.
have tried something like this 3 or 4 times in the last 15 years, but the market has never been right. Now, the market's right. The emotion and the leadership are also kind of lined up. The Saudis originally went to the Russians with a deal for a preemptive cut to manage the oil market back in January and February, and the Russians said no. So the Saudis got pissed off. This wouldn't have worked without global oil demand being down by 20, 30 million barrels a day. Second, leadership. We got a new guy in charge, Mohammed bin Salman. If you've seen my readings or writings, you know that he's not my favorite person. He kind of makes Putin look like a kinder, gentler kind of gentleman. But he's young. And he's taken the institutions of Saudi Arabia by storm. He's consolidating power. And honestly, this is what a king does. And if this works for him, he will have consolidated his person as the most powerful person in the region for at least the next couple of decades. I think he's aware of that. This is his proving ground. And so far, in my opinion, it's going really well for him.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating when you start.
See, this is what I'm saying, man. It's most definitely an interesting take, and it's shit that we don't really hear a whole lot from other people.
You're right. It's also, I think, like everything that happened after I said this, it backs me up on observationally, this guy is correct. Like, he's observing the same things that we all observe. And he has a good take. Not gonna shit on him.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I'm a fucking, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is why I kind of like this shit. You know what I mean? Legitimately, like, I want to get these type of messages out to people. You know what I mean? Because it's most definitely an interesting take on things. You know what I mean?
I really have the fucking hiccups right now. Tom,
yeah, I fucking hear
you got to work very, very soon. Let's do a part 2 tomorrow night.
I'm with your ideology. You know what I mean? Fucking so like everybody come back here. What do you want to say? Like 9:30?
9:30 Eastern, 10:30. Yep.
All right. Yeah. 9:30 tomorrow night. You know what I'm saying? We'll fucking stand here and you know what I mean, do part 2 of this. You know what I mean? And like run through the rest of this video and shit, and you know what I mean, break down more what the hell is going on geopolitically across the world. I think it's gonna be awesome. You know what I mean?
And I'll sit here and just keep hiccuping because I just can't stop.
Oh, I feel you.
God damn
it. All right, man. All right, let's get the fuck off of here. You know what I mean? In the meantime, you know what I'm saying? Thank you very much, everybody, for coming out. It's appreciated. You know what I mean? We'll fucking be back here tomorrow night. Excel, my brother.